Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of What They Don't Say. Today, I'm sitting down with Derrick Hurley, who is a father of a woman who was drugged and raped by a London police officer while studying in nursing school in Antigua. So, the majority of this episode, for about the first 50 minutes or so, Derrick and I dive into the story of his daughter and what happened to her, as well as the court process that they went through. Derrick, as her father, sort of took on this role to push the case forward while she was in school so she could try to focus on studies after this horrible thing happened to her. Now, a particular part of this case that I think is really interesting is that this was actually the very first case where a British citizen, Lee Martin Cramp, the police officer, was extradited to the island. So even though there were laws in place, it had never actually happened until this court case occurred, making this a historical conviction. Now, the second half of this episode, Derrick and I have a conversation about faith and religion. And I know that faith and religion is one of those things that can really turn people off, and you might even want to turn off this episode because of that. But in my opinion, faith and religion really come down to a set of core values. And I've been wanting to have a conversation with somebody about faith for a long time, especially faith in the context like after sexual assault and how it can shift things for you and really make you look at the world in a different way. So I thought that Derrick was the perfect person for that conversation. This is really ultimately a conversation about core values and beliefs. Derrick does have a book where he dives deep into all of the details of his daughter's case from beginning to end. He has documents, he took notes, he took videos, he documented literally everything from beginning to end. So that book will be linked down below. And Derrick will mention this later in the episode, but I'll just go ahead and put it out there now. He literally quit his job to be a full-time survivor advocate, which is insane. That's amazing. But with that being said, he really wants to be a resource for you guys. So if you are going through a court case or you want to pursue a case or you just want somebody to talk to, or maybe you're a parent and you want to talk to another parent who's been through this process, go ahead, send him an email. Don't be afraid. He's wonderful. One little note, the sound quality of this episode did get a little messed up. I record with the majority of guests over like Riverside or Zoom, and you can't guarantee the sound quality to be perfect. So I really appreciate your guys' patience and willingness to still listen, even though the sound quality isn't perfect. I chose not to split this episode up. It felt like a better episode to keep it together. So it is on the longer end. So buckle up, get ready, grab yourself a snack and your favorite beverage. Let's get into my conversation with Derrick Hurley. Hi, Derrick. Thank you so much for being with me today. I'm just wondering if you could start by giving my audience and myself a sort of background and an overview of your story and what your family went through back in 2015.
Sure, Shannon, and thanks for having me on your program. So just a little background. I have three daughters and a wife, surrounded by women. Our family is very much a Christian-based family. Our kids went to Christian school through middle and high school. My oldest daughter, Caitlin, and the story is really about her journey, wanted to be a nurse. She was going to Belmont College in Nashville as a nurse, but at the end of her senior year, she went on a mission trip with the school and down to Costa Rica. I actually went with them. I was a chaperone. It kind of really was a game changer for her in that she just has a heart for people. She saw people in a different light when you go to impoverished areas, and she really wanted to help. And when she came back, she started thinking, maybe there's something I can do with my nursing in that area. She decided she wanted to do travel nursing and be a missionary nurse in between travel assignments.
Right.
And I was concerned that she might not do so well living outside the comforts of the U.S.
Right.
So my wife was searching for some schools. She found a school in Antigua in the Eastern Caribbean. This is not one of those fancy schools. It's a very rustic school, as I like to call it.
Hmm.
Um, and and Caitlin was really eager to go because they did have a U.S. accredited program. So if she didn't like living out, she could just get her to take the NCLEX in the U.S. and go nurse in the U.S. That was kind of the plan. We flew down in 2014, met with the deans and all that, and she wanted to enroll. It's a 3-year program. And so she started in May of 2014. Uh, it took her 4 to 6 weeks. I'd say she was pretty well acclimated and doing well. It's a bit of an adjustment, particularly socially,
Right.
but she did well and was enjoying it. And I think it just got better and better for her. And my only worry about sending her down there at all was she she was a bit naive. She was,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just say this up front. Caitlin was a virgin. She was saving herself. This kind of aligned with her Christian values,
Right.
um, which is kind of important to the story. And so in her second year, it was actually the beginning of her second year. There's 3 years, tri-semester, sorry, per year. And she had met uh, this gentleman online named Lee Martin Cramp, who was a Metropolitan Police officer from London. And this wasn't the first time she met somebody who's on a social media app. I mean, she often met people from the U.S., Canada, and England via that on the island. And I think what really happens is people go there, and you've got the excursions you can find in a magazine or something. But they look for locals near their age. Hey, what can we do? What can we do at
Right.
night? Those kind of
Just
things. And
trying to
so,
like
anyway,
create a community while you're
yeah,
there.
yeah. Find people with common interests. And actually, it was good for Caitlin because there weren't a lot of Americans down there, and it was mutually beneficial usually. Um, so anyway, they texted quite a bit and decided to meet up um, and go to a boat show. It's a big boating island. I mean, massive boats down there. It's a big deal. And I will say, through all the text exchanges, Caitlin was very clear up front about no sex. That's not my thing. We're not, just don't have
Right.
expectations. And he, of course, agreed. And so it all seemed fine. They went to the boat show. It ends kind of early. Her apartment was pretty close by, and she had a great view of the harbor and the English harbor in Antigua. So they go back to her apartment and just really sit out and just chat, which they did until the mosquitoes started getting really aggressive, which I've been there and got off that porch real quick because they are rough.
Right. I can
Um,
imagine.
so she decides, hey, they're going to watch a movie and just hang out. And she was going to change clothes because she was dressed in a nice dress for the boat show, but not so comfortable to sit and watch a movie in. So she goes back and puts on long pants, sweatpants, and a long sleeve sweatshirt, basically, and comes
Mhm.
back and they had poured a glass of wine each, and she got a drink of her wine and said this doesn't taste right, and he said, oh, I got some vodka out of your freezer and put a little in it. Basically says we do this in the UK all the time, although that's not true. And she tried it one more time and said, I'm not drinking that. But it only took 2 sips really.
Mhm.
And in about 10 minutes, she started getting dizzy. She had two flash memories throughout the whole night,
Mm.
and that was it.
Wow.
And she woke up naked, which was basically a first for her, and she knew something wasn't right. He was emphatic about nothing happened. He basically acted like he drank too much. He couldn't remember things.
Right, of course. It's always the yeah,
Yeah,
that's what they always
yeah.
say.
She got him out of there pretty quick, but she just didn't know what happened, and she wanted to know what really happened. And he was like, look, nothing happened, blah, blah, blah. Well, they had a lot of ongoing texts. I think he was in town for maybe 3 more days. Over the course of that time, she kept challenging him. All this is in text
Mhm.
messages. All this, eventually got into court. Um, and he lied, but he slightly changed the story as he needed to through the text
Mhm.
messages. But Caitlin started getting pain in the vaginal area. She started bruising started appearing in her arms,
Mhm.
her thighs, all these things. And she was, I know hoping it didn't happen, but certainly thinking this might have happened.
Right.
And then she started pressing him pretty hard. Um, and then really just before they flew out of the country, he admitted that they had sex. And then literally he got on the plane and flew off. And Caitlin, so this is where our family gets involved. Caitlin was, of course, beside herself.
Right.
And she texted my wife, Jill, and said, hey, can we Skype? And can you take your laptop into the bedroom? And I'm sitting in our family room with my other two daughters, Taylor and Emily, watching TV. And so they go back there, and within about 30 seconds, we can hear Caitlin sobbing, just
Mhm.
hard. And the girl, it was a little awkward. The girl's looking at me like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "I don't
I
know."
know.
But
Right.
if it's really important, a big deal, Jill will come get me. I thought maybe she did bad on a test or something, because that stuff bothered her.
Right.
But about 30 seconds later, the door opened, and Jill said, "Can you come back?" And Jill basically, as soon as she shut the door, said Caitlin was raped. And Caitlin was off the Skype. She was going to call back after Jill had a chance to catch me up. And immediately you get all these adrenaline rush and endorphins. You know,
Right.
my first question was who was it? Do we know who it
Mm.
was? And it was
Yeah.
just I didn't know she was going on that date, by the way, so didn't
Right.
know. And she said it was a UK police officer, and I was just infuriated.
Mm.
But you know, I quickly went to how's Caitlin? What's her mental state? Because I knew she was going to call us back,
Mm.
and I knew it wasn't good because I heard all the crying. You know, to
Right.
be honest, but I just needed to see what details she could tell me. Caitlin calls back. I try to comfort her as best I can, telling her she felt. I will just say she texted me just before she said I'm getting ready to call, and she's basically apologizing to me. She says I didn't do the things you told us to do, like don't leave your drink
Oh.
alone and all. And I felt horrible. I
Well,
mean,
it's what we always tell people
I
is that
know.
it's this like safety list of things,
That's
and
right.
it's really interesting because those safety lists are the exact things that perpetrators use to blame victims and what victims use to blame ourselves. But
Hmm.
it's not your fault, like it's the cover your drink, don't walk alone at night. That's all we know as a society because we don't know how to protect ourselves from perpetrators because we can't because they're going to do it anyways. So
Exactly.
I just wanted to put that in there that
I think you're right on. I
yeah.
actually first thing I said is, look, you made some mistakes, but it is not your fault. It's his fault.
Mm-mm.
Don't worry about those mistakes. This I just didn't want. I wanted to take everything off her I could because she was in kind of bad shape, and we basically said, look, go to the hospital, get a rape exam, and call the police.
Right.
And the guy in the UK had already blocked her number,
Mm.
so So anyway, this was probably 10 o'clock in the evening. It's good, probably 25 minutes to the hospital. I knew it was going to take a little while. So
Mm.
we go and book Jill a flight to Antigua. This was a Wednesday evening. The best we could get Jill there. It's not easy to get to Antigua from Knoxville, Tennessee.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably not a whole lot of direct flights.
no. So while we booked the flight, she went and met with the Detective Hope, who was the head of their sexual assault division. And he gets her first and takes her in a room and wants to hear the story. And she tells her the story. And then he tells her she can't get her exam done at the hospital.
Mm.
And and basically there's one hospital. Antigua's like 14 miles north to south and 11 east to west. So it's not that big. One hospital is all they really need, but they have clinics throughout the island in different communities, and they want people to go to the clinic in their community.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is, first of all, they're only open till a certain time. They were not open. And the bigger problem for Caitlin was she was a nursing student working in that clinic, and she did
So
not want to go where she worked.
right.
She knew all the people. It was just not a good thing. So she told him that was a problem and why. And he says, I'll work on getting something done for your exam, but it just won't be tonight.
Mm.
Okay, remember, this is Wednesday night. She gets back, calls us, tells us, and of course that just got me irritated,
Of
to
course.
be nice about it because it's ridiculous.
Right.
Um, so as Jill's leaving Saturday, while she's traveling down, I'll just tell you because this is kind of an important point. I worked for a UK company at the time, and
Mm.
it was the third UK company I'd worked for in my career. And one of the guys there I knew that was a friend of mine, had worked in community policing in the UK. And I texted him Saturday and said, "Hey, could you do a call with me tomorrow? Would you be available?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, "Well, it's not work. This is personal." He says, "No problem." So while Jill's working her way down there, I'm trying to get set up to get some advice from somebody that knew a little bit about policing in
Mm.
England. And so I'll just finish my part on that call. So on Sunday, I talked to him and tell him the situation, and he was, I'm sure he could tell from my tone and everything, aggressiveness maybe. He basically was saying, look, let the system have a chance. Don't do anything irrational. He was just trying to calm me and say,
Oh
try to work the
gosh.
system. But I will also say he, like 99.9% of everyone I encountered through this long ordeal, basically were saying it's going to be hard to get anything criminally done.
Mm.
maybe civilly, or maybe you can get him fired. And I'll just be honest, that wasn't going to be acceptable to me.
Yeah.
It just wasn't.
You're not met with a whole lot of hope or encouragement, but that's
That's
the
that,
last
and
thing
that
you
was,
want to hear.
and that's people tried to lower my expectations throughout this, and they did it for with good intentions.
Right.
As if you know the statistics, I didn't know them at the time. I get it. I got it more after, but anyway, I did follow his instructions. I called they have a number for non-emergency to file a complaint. And really, I wanted to do that because I knew this probably wasn't his first time. He planned it.
Mhm.
He's a predator, and there's nothing worse than a predator in a police uniform.
Yep.
I will say that a third party takes the calls because they have oversight in the UK on these things, and it went basically to what would be equivalent to, our group that polices the police.
Mhm.
Um, and theirs is like professionalism and misconduct division. Anyway, they called me the next day though, a pretty senior guy, and we talked about it. I got him. I had all the text messages. I gave him everything right off. But anyway, so I already started it with the UK police basically by the Monday when Jill was there. The Monday was probably one of the worst days that we had. So Jill's there on a Saturday in Antigua with Caitlin. Um, She had not heard back from the police about a date for the hospital. So remember, Wednesday, now it's Saturday,
Right.
nothing. Sunday, nothing. So they made a plan. And Monday morning, and I'll give you a little more detail early because it was the critical times and it was really
Mhm.
important.
Absolutely.
They first thing they did was call Detective Hope's phone, got his voicemail, and then my wife called the consulate because the embassy is in Barbados, and really just called and said, "Look, we don't live here. Here's what's happened. Our daughter's in school here. Can you give me some advice?" And the only advice she said she could give was not to call the embassy,
Hmm.
which is not what you're expecting.
Right.
And she just said they would try to take over and upset the local police, and then you wouldn't get the help you needed. So we took
Mm.
that advice, and in retrospect, it ended up being very good advice. After that, the detective calls Caitlin back and asked to meet at a local precinct, which was 2 or 3 miles from her house. No big deal. He wants to hear the story again. It's the second time she's had to tell it.
Mm.
None of it's official yet.
Of course.
And my wife Jill is a non-confrontational person. She does not like confrontation, but when she is pushed into confrontation, she will go at it. Um, and she was feeling like they weren't doing enough. They weren't taking it serious enough because it was just slow. She's already told this story, saw this, and she basically said,
Mm.
"Look, my daughter's being drugged and raped. What are we going to start doing something about this?"
Yeah.
Basically just frustrated. And he basically said to them both right there, not one bit of investigation had happened. He said nothing's going to come of it because Antigua doesn't extradite. So that kind of is a big deflating moment,
Right.
for them. He did get her set up for a hospital appointment in that hospital that she couldn't go to the first time. I think the next day they went. That was kind of a rough start. I will just tell you from my perspective. Jill's calling me once or twice, maybe 3 times some days to update me on what's
Mhm.
happening. And that Monday, it was fairly late when she called. I would say, by the time we got off the phone, I'm sure it was around 10 o'clock. But I basically said, "Hey, well, how was your day?" And she said it was a rough day.
Mm.
And she tells me what I just told you about what the police said. I'll just say once she said that he commented that nothing would come of it, my first response was, "We'll see about that." You
Right.
know, I'm just mad right off. I'm
Which
just
is a
staying
good
right off.
response to have.
Well,
It's
it's how I felt because something's going to happen one way or the other. Is how I really felt about it.
right.
And then she told me about the consulate, and that that really upset me too because I thought they were there to help the U.S. citizens, and I'm thinking this is zero help.
Right.
Um, so anyway, I'll move past that. That's kind of how it all got started. About Jill was down there a week. We were worried as parents. Do we leave her in school there?
Right.
Is this what how? Because she was having a rough time, and Jill was down there. She was definitely the right person to be down there. She was just so helpful to Caitlin. And I will just say this: Caitlin was having more and more pain by the day, by the hour almost.
Mm.
When she did the exam, the doctor said, "Why didn't you come in earlier?" She said, "I came in a week ago."
Tried.
and they wouldn't let me. The doctor was really upset about it. She said we could have gave you antibiotics. She got infected. She had some damage basically, and it got infected, and they could have given her something and kept that pain. That pain was just brutal for her. But anyway, we were struggling with what to do with Caitlin, and I really wanted her to try to stay, but I wasn't going to push her at all to stay. If she wanted to come home,
Right.
I was just going to bring her home. And so I called her, and this was probably midway through the second week. And I said, Caitlin, look, are you okay to stay in school? What do you want to do? And I didn't want to sound like I was putting any pressure on her because I would have done whatever she wanted. It mattered, but it didn't matter if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And her first response was actually the first thing she said was, "We need to do something about this guy because
Wow.
he's just going to go do this to the next person."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, yeah, I mean I appreciate that, but right now let's worry about you. I'm
Right.
taking care of that already. I'm already down that path.
Right. You're like, I'm on it, girl. I'm on it.
Yeah, I've already done this, and she said, "Well, I would like to stick it out." Well, I said, "Look," but I could tell she was really focused on what are we going to do,
Right.
what's going to happen. And I said, "Look, we'll make a deal." Not sure it was the smartest deal I've ever made, but I said, if you can focus on school, and we will get whatever therapy, whatever help you feel like you need support wise as best we can. We'll come down more. I will just take this and run with it. And she's pretty quickly said, yeah, that's good. Because I think she
Yeah.
was glad I was just saying, I'll go do it. So you're going to have to write letters to the police so that they will know to come to me, and I'll drive it. And so that's what we did. Another thing she said on that night is, I'm going to have to move out of this apartment because I'm
Oh
like
yeah.
seeing things and stuff like that. And so I said, you can move out as soon as you find a place to live. Two weeks after, I called Corporal Forbes, and he's actually was a younger police officer. He was outstanding. He checked on Caitlin every once in a while. He would make sure she felt safe. All the things really you should do. That they hadn't had training on that, I'll just say, but naturally that's the kind of guy he was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, sorry to
hmm
interrupt, but at any point, so like so far in this process, did you have a distrust with police officers since your daughter had just been assaulted by one, or was it? Did you feel confident in them?
No, I did not have any distrust. I had disappointment in the senior guy,
Mm.
just because how he handled some of that just seemed ridiculous. But he was pretty much out of it for the most part after that initial thing.
Okay.
And then Corporal Forbes took over, and he was outstanding.
Okay.
Um,
That's good.
but no, I really I didn't have any distrust. I'm kind of a law and order person anyway, and so I'm a big police person. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's just disappointing. But so what I did next was I called Corporal Forbes. This is about 2 weeks in. Once I know Caitlin's going to stay,
Hmm.
called him and said, What's the update? What are we doing?" And he said, "Well, we've collected all the evidence. I've turned it over to Commissioner Robinson, and you really need to reach out to him." So he gave me his number, and I called him. And Commissioner Robinson was just incredibly good, empathetic, smart. Just he really probably was the single most important person to me through this.
Mm.
He was just an advisor. He didn't he just gave me, hey, think about this. You can do this. You can do this.
Good.
He was outstanding. Um, but I called him and said, I talked to Corporal Forbes. I understand you have the evidence. I did leave out something really important. Let me backtrack and say that night Jill told me about nothing's going to happen that evening in the consulate. It was by the time I got off the phone with her, it was about 10:30, and I was only sleeping about 2 hours a night, so I just decided to go get on my laptop and do some research. I had a bit of a rough after that call. I had a 10-15 minutes was just a breakdown.
Mm.
Um, it's just I was more worried about what's going to happen with Caitlin, more than
Of
anything.
course.
What's her life going to be? That's where my mind was going. If nothing happens, what's this going to be?
Right.
So then I just buckled up and said, basically, F it. I'm going to drive this thing myself. And I went and got on the computer, and I found that there is an extradition treaty for the
Mm.
Eastern Caribbean, and Antigua is one of the named islands that has the ability with the UK to do extradition. I read it about 3 times, so I felt like I fully understood it. I went and looked up there. They have a Sexual Offenses Act of 1995. read the appropriate law around what went on with Caitlin, and I'm like, well, this completely works. They just
Mm.
haven't ever used it. Well, we're going to see if we can't get them to use it.
Right.
So when I called Commissioner Robinson and I said, look, told him who I was, I had not spoken with him, and kind of gave him the scoop and said, look, I know you guys haven't done extradition, but I do know you have a treaty. I do know this offense qualifies. What are you going to do? And like I said, because if you've got it, if not now, when? It's kind of the way
Right.
I looked at it. Yeah. So he said, and he was just super nice. And he said, look, I've got all the evidence except the medical report. As soon as I get that, if it comes out the way I think it's going to come out, then I will recommend extradition. That was a big relief to hear that. But he did say, I haven't seen that, but I did have a female officer in during the rape exam.
Mm.
And she has told me she's 99% sure Caitlin was raped, and she would only say 100% if she actually saw it happen. So
Right.
that was pretty convincing to him.
Yeah.
Eventually, another couple of days, they got the report, and he did recommend it to Attorney General and the Director of Public Prosecution, and they took that forward.
Mm.
So that's the front end, and I'm gonna be real quick through this next bit to get to the back. But
You're all good.
it took a long time. It was brutal because they I had to keep telling myself they've never done this before, and it's quite a technical process.
Mm.
And so they do it. There's some mistakes in it. They have to get it and rework it, and there's a lot of back and forth. And sometimes it just didn't go the timing they told us. It just wasn't happening. So there was a lot of that. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Mm.
But we finally got the extradition accepted by the Crown Prosecution Service. They do a number of hearings for extradition. I went to one of them. I was working for a UK company who I just tagged on one of my trips to when the
Like
extradition hearing
perfect.
was. I wanted people to know I was showing up and I wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
They have to inform the defendant that I'm there. That's kind of
So you
part of
did
what I want.
you so did you see Lee when you went?
Oh yeah,
Oh
oh
wow.
yeah. The police and look, I'll just tell you this. This is a little bit funny to me. I meet my normal police that I knew there were on some training out of town. So a couple of their colleagues met me. I did not know them, but I knew their names. They
Mm.
met me in front of the courthouse, and one was there, and the other one came from the courthouse out and said, "Look, the defense attorney asked if you would come in just a little late. Apparently, their process is you introduce your name and address."
Mm.
And he told me this is why they don't, because he's got to say his name and address. And I just kind of chuckled and I said, look, guys, I'm not here to cause trouble. I mean, this isn't where I cause trouble. Let's face
Hmm.
it. I said, but I already have his name and address. So that's fine. That's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of technical guy. I already found all that stuff out. So I just thought it was funny. But they weren't worried. They kind of boxed me in my seat and all this. I'm like, it's fine. They got to do what they need to do. But I was glad that they were required to tell them. I wanted them to know I was there,
Hmm.
or know I'm gonna be there. You
Which I
know.
think it brings a different presence into like a courtroom, or I don't know what this room looked like when I mean, I don't know what it's like to be in their shoes, but if I was him and I knew that the father of the person that I assaulted was going to be there, it brings this like, oh shit, like this is real. This is very serious. And
But I was hoping,
yeah, which is good. Yes, absolutely.
especially when they come from across the ocean, right? I mean,
Right.
it's not close by.
Because they can be confused and think that, oh, I'm going to get away with it. Like that was a big thing in my case. Our perpetrator was like laughing in between, like on court recesses, and he did not take it seriously. And once obviously he heard the verdict, he became a lot more serious. But a lot of the times they don't think that they're going to get caught.
Oh, I'm sure he thought he wasn't. I'm sure when he left that island and got on that plane and it was off the ground, I'm sure he
He
thought he
thought
was
it
scot
was.
free.
Mm-hmm.
He just picked the wrong family, to be
Yeah.
honest, because I was not gonna stop. So this, if the fast forward, it took a long time on the extradition. The first, and I don't know much about extraditions. I mean, you hear about them, you know what they're for. That's
Mm-hmm.
about it. I kind of got fairly educated because I had to. Um, but once they came to the first verdict, and we had one of the maybe the most senior judge in the UK. I knew she was good,
Wow.
Judge Arvinoff. And I was not there for the, I'll say, verdict at this point. The first attempt, they did not grant it.
The
He did not have
extradition
to go, but and it was because the prison system was so inhumane.
in
They have
Antigua.
humanitarian laws and agreements, and they're not going to send a citizen away for that. They're just not. So when the one of the UK guys called me after he was there, and he reached out to me and said it did not get approved, I was panicking. And he said, "Look, we have 3 years. We can reattempt it, but we're going to have to come up with a different prison option." And I did kind of expect this. I just didn't want it to be true
Right.
because I mean the prisons, you can Google, and it's notoriously horrific. Which I really wanted him to spend his time in.
Right. Wait, what's the name of the prison so that people who are
It's
listening
it's
can.
it's Her Majesty's prison, but it goes by 17. I believe it's 1735, which was the year it was born. Is
Mm,
There's no running water, there's no electricity, and it's overcrowded. I mean, it's
yeah.
bad. It's really bad. But I kind of wanted him to be there. I felt like he was pretty
Yeah.
bad, so he should be there.
Yeah.
If he
Well,
would have we would have got to him before he left the country. That's where he would be.
okay. But he
But
just left
anyway,
to
just to
lay
fast
in.
forward that, it
Yeah.
took another. I will say this: I was worried right off. I talked to Commissioner Robinson. I talked to the Attorney General in Antigua, and they both said we have options, which I did not know.
Mm,
That was a huge relief. They had another building that they actually had a former police officer that had killed somebody. He was serving there. They couldn't put him in with other people. They'd
mm,
kill him. And then they had a former U.S. naval base, which had a jail. I mean, it has all that stuff in it. But it was going on and on and on, and it's stressful, stressful, stressful. And you're just thinking, is this ever going to happen? And even though they kept saying we're going to get it done, it's going to happen soon, and it just went on and on. And we
right.
got to a point where I talked to the Attorney General. Actually, Caitlin was graduating the summer of 2017. I was going down for 10 days to help her to go to her graduation and to help her move back.
Mm,
And because her dreams of missionary nursing and all that went out the window, which we
mm,
can talk about in a bit. But so I called Commissioner Robinson. I'm going to be there. Caitlin's going to be down for Caitlin's graduation, and she'll be leaving the island. So we met with him on a Sunday, and I said I'd like to meet with the Attorney General and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I was talking to everybody. I never met some of these people, and
okay.
he called on a Sunday on their cell phones and set up a meeting with both of them separately. I wanted Caitlin sitting in front of them. I wanted them to
Mm,
tell her to her face they're going to make this happen. That was
mm,
what I wanted. It's harder after you've met somebody in person
right.
and you commit this. It makes it a little more pressure to get it
Right.
done.
It
That was my
becomes more
thinking.
real. It's not just a
Yeah,
case on paper. It's a
yeah. It's a
person.
person, not just a name on a piece of paper. Yeah.
Mm,
So we did that. Excellent meetings. They both committed. They would do whatever they could. Call them if I needed anything, kind of thing. And the Attorney General told me to call them in 2 weeks. They thought they would be ready to resubmit. I'll just say this: in 2 weeks they weren't ready, and they had a
right.
good excuse. Call me next week or in 2 weeks. I'll wait 2 weeks. Call again. Not ready. They call me in two, and that's kind of what the theme was all for 4 years. Call me
Mm,
every in a couple 2 3 weeks.
mm,
And the last time he was annoyed, I called, um, and I was didn't understand it since he told me to call him.
mm,
But I knew at that time I probably wasn't getting anywhere at this point with him. He had done a lot. I don't. Yeah, it's a little annoying, but he came through for us. I don't want to say anything bad. I mean, I just they can't put themselves in the shoes I was in. I'm sure,
right.
and if they would have communicated a little more, it might have made it easier. So what I did, and this gets near towards the end, I called Commissioner Robinson, my kind of my guy down there that would at least get my head straight and calm me down.
Mm,
And I said, look, Commissioner Robinson, I just got off the phone with Attorney General Benjamin, and here's what's happened over the last 6 weeks. And in spite of this is 3 years in, roughly, I couldn't get him to call me by my first name. So he says, yeah, Mr. Hurley. And I'm like, Mr. Hurley, look, I think it's time. He said, I think you've taken this as far as you can take it. I think you should call the embassy now and see if they can't push it over the line for you.
And you're
I
like,
said,
wait, I'm
okay.
not supposed to talk to the embassy.
Yeah, at this point, so this was very interesting to me. So I literally got off, looked up the number, called, and they took my name and number, so we'll have somebody call you back. Within 30 minutes, someone called. I told them the story. They were a bit puzzled because this has happened a few years ago. And he asked me if I would, everything I just told him, could I summarize in an email so he could share it to other people? I said, sure. So within an hour, I sent that to him. I think the next day or the day after, a senior person, William Bent, called me. Very nice gentleman, and it was an interesting call. He said, "Look, he told me who he was. He said, look, I have looked into this. I know a little bit about it, but before we talk about it, I just want to ask you a question." I'm thinking, where's this going? He said, "I just need to understand how you got the case this far without us knowing." And I was trying to figure out what to say. He said, "Oh," then he said, "because we can't get them this far. We can't get the cases this far."
Which is a really
And
crazy thing to admit as well
I know,
on
and
their part.
I mean, I'm sure statistically you could look it up anyway, and you'd see. But yes, I mean, I was a little taken aback, and I didn't know what to say. I need his help, so I don't want to offend him.
Hmm.
And I said, so I thought just for a couple of seconds, I said, "Look, Mr. Ben, no offense here, but I was told, and I told him what we were told. Don't do it. Here's why." And I even said, maybe this why is the reason you haven't been able to get things moved forward the same way. But I said, we can talk about that all you want, but right now I need your help. Can we talk
Hmm.
about that? And so we transitioned. Um, and I said, here's where we are. We're stuck on this prison thing. Can you help? And he said, let me get on it. What happened, to make it short, was they ended up getting, they did communicate back and forth with Antigua. Nothing. He learned nothing from them I hadn't told him, but that's fine. But so he was in the mix now. The real key was they got a lady from the UK embassy named Sarah Abraham involved, and she was I'll say criminal justice advisor. I'm sure I'm messing her title up. Sarah, if you hear this, I'm sorry, but can't remember everybody's title.
Right.
And she went in, and I didn't know what she was doing at first. She became critical. She worked out the prison thing and helped negotiate the everything about him being there.
Mm.
It actually took the appeal part out of the extradition because they went ahead and negotiated everything that the lawyer was saying. He has to have this much time, get on Skype with once a week with his family, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Didn't know any of that. All I know is she went in and stopped a parliament meeting in session and stopped it to get the prime minister to sign off on the agreement.
Wow. That's
And
incredible.
so, yeah, she was critical. And as soon as that happened and they did that, everything went through, and it was really very fast at that point. Within a month of her getting involved, I would say roughly a month, they said they got the new request. The hearing was in 2 weeks. We're extraditing him, and he showed up in Antigua within a month.
Wow.
But now that was 3 years and over 3 years, 3 years and 4 months or something, just to get to the extradition.
Mm.
Um, Then we go to trial. Even still, I will tell you, even my wife was not optimistic because let me just say this statistically, in 2014 statistics, so when it happened, it was 2015, and that's where the knowledge from this was from.
Hmm.
0.6% of perpetrators of sexual assault went to prison. Just over 1/2 of 1%. It is up about 2.5, 2.4 something now, but at the time,
So low.
that's scary.
Yeah, the odds are not in your favor.
And I understand why so many people were pessimistic even about it because this just doesn't happen. And on top of 0.6%, we have a country that's never extradited. So in the beginning, it looked like there's just no chance this is
Right.
going to happen. I mean, it had to be. It's just 0.001 or something, just ridiculous odds. Nevertheless, we got the trial, and it was rough. And Caitlin was outstanding on the stand.
Mm.
Did a great job. We had two key pieces of evidence. One was the text message exchanges, and it was very clear on that. And the second was her medical report. I mean, those were the key pieces of evidence. Not a he said, she said. This is
Right.
all what had gone on. This is the medical report. The defense attorneys were what you would probably expect, just trying to
Yeah,
blame,
probably
blame,
awful.
blame because they
Yeah.
had no defense. They had no defense. He
Mm-hmm.
did. I will tell you one thing that for Antigua had been colonized by the UK, so their legal system follows UK law. Now they're independent
Okay.
now, and they have been for a while, but it followed UK law, and there's a few differences in how they do court and how we do court. And one of the big differences is when he was extradited and he came in with a written statement.
Mm.
And so they question him and all, but all he does is say, refer to the statements. I have nothing else to say. That's fine.
Ugh.
That's fine. When you get into the court, he has three options. He can take the stand under oath. He can not take the stand, or he can speak in what they call the box, which is literally a box he sat in the whole time, which was about 15 feet from me, which was very tempting, I'm just going to
Mm.
say.
Yeah,
But
that's a little too
um,
close.
so he can tell his story not under oath, no cross examination, nothing. I know
Excuse
I
me?
wasn't too comfortable about that until I realized listening to him because his story and Caitlin's story was the same until they got back to her apartment. And
Mm.
then clearly it goes different directions. The problem is he didn't address any of the things in the text that he's contradicting. Any of
Mm.
the lies in there. He avoids all the tricky stuff. He just tells a story like it was all fun. And when you act like it was all just joyful and fun, and you got this kind of damage,
That's
he
not
actually hung
fun.
himself with what his story. It probably made it easier for the jury, not
Mm.
less
So
difficult.
he did ultimately, he was in the box, and that's how he quote unquote testified. That was the option he took.
Yeah,
Wow.
not you couldn't cross him or anything. Now what the prosecutor was able to do is use what he said in her closing, which she did, and it was powerful because she called out all the things that was not right. He's telling you this now, but here's what he was saying. And I mean, I will
Mm.
say that the judge was outstanding. He has a lot of experience. He was like a judge from a movie.
Hmm.
And the closing statement in particular, closing arguments from the prosecutor was like from a movie. It was unreal good.
Wow.
Um, and so basically, it was so stressful waiting for a verdict, but it only took 2 hours, thank goodness. Um, and then they found him guilty. And let me just say a couple other quick things. So during this process, we had told three people,
Mm.
Jill and I, and only, well, not that it's something you want to talk about because you don't, but I talked to lawyers in the UK and I talked to lawyers in Antigua, and everyone's saying don't talk about it, don't talk
Which
about
I
it.
was going to ask. Yeah, why did they give that advice to you? Were they worried that the story would get muddled? Were they worried that you would get outside opinions? What was their reasoning for that?
Yeah, because let me just say this and then I'm going to answer it because it's kind of pertinent to the answer. This story was in every UK newspaper every time there was a hiccup in the story. I mean,
Wow.
it was constantly in the paper. It was never in any stuff here because Caitlin was protected through anonymity. Nobody
Mm.
knew. But a
Was her
police
name
officer in London,
in was her name in papers in the
no,
UK? Okay, good.
no. It was just a student in Antigua was about what it went.
Okay.
And I don't even know, it might have said U.S. student, but that didn't matter.
Mm.
But it was all over there. But so what they were saying is, look, the press is pretty aggressive with this stuff. I don't want them to misconstrue what you're saying or have anything that can jeopardize the extradition. It started mainly about the extradition. We don't want to screw it up. And believe me, I was working too hard. This was my daily grind, for a long
Right.
time. And I wasn't going to do anything to mess it up. We had one couple that was good close friends of ours that we told, and my wife told one of her aunts,
Mm.
and that was it. But anyway, so we hadn't really talked about it. And so when the trial was over, when we were flying back, Caitlin said she was going to give up her anonymity. And because, this is after the Me Too movement, she said, we need more of these stories out there to keep this kind of alive. And so we talked to a number of news organizations. There were a lot of interest in it. CNN and ultimately was at our house. That's who she ended up working with. For the sentencing, we Skyped in, and CNN was in our living room with us watching the Skype for the sentencing. And then
Mm.
they wrote an article. So if anybody wants to read that article, you can easily find it.
I'll put it in the description of this episode as well. So if anybody wants to go read it.
And I'm sure you can, and I wrote a book about it as well. So, and it is, I'm just going to say this about the book. It is, from my perspective, because I was doing all the advocacy work and in the grind. I wrote the book because not too many fathers talk about this, and
Right.
so I thought it would be different. I thought it's a very interesting and compelling story, and it was historic from the Eastern Caribbean perspective. It's historic, but it you. I'll just say this: I did not hold back in the book. I will. My wife and my middle daughter, not Caitlin, both asked me to take stuff out. They said, I don't know if you want to say this. It's not going to make you look good. And I said, I'm not taking it out. It's just the
Right.
truth.
It's
I
not
don't
about
care.
what makes you look good, which
No,
is
I
very
don't care.
admirable, I will say.
I honestly don't care what people think. This is how I felt. I'm just sharing how I felt, or what my thought process was. And I mean, I understood why they said it, by the way, but they just making sure. But anyway, so we did that. CNN was there, and then he got 15 years required to do 11. We'll see.
Mm.
He did appeal. He lost, and then they have something called the Privy Council, which is more also a UK thing, which is be like a Supreme Court kind of thing, and
Mm.
they read the appellate court's ruling, and then they just wouldn't even take it. So there's no
Right.
need for us to take this. We
Good.
no. So that was when so that was 4 years to the dates when he was convicted,
4 years.
and
Okay.
then it was about 10 days short of 7 years before it was all done.
Wow. That's a really long
Anyway, I'm sorry. That's
process.
a little bit of a long story, and I gave you the short
So,
version.
oh no, you're good. So so you had mentioned that attorneys told you not to tell people. Once you were sitting there and you got the sentencing and you knew that this article was going to come out, do you wish that you had told members of your family earlier? Because once the article was going to come out, you realized, oh no, I have to tell everybody before the article comes out. So was there this fear at all of, oh my gosh, what is my family going to think? I should have told them sooner.
Well, I'll just try to keep this brief. It wasn't it was more dread than fear,
Mm.
if you know what I mean. So the sentencing was done on a Wednesday, and of course Shannon does the interviews, and I'm thinking it's going to take a couple of weeks because to do something like this, you got to go through legal, and that's usually
Right.
not quick. So I wasn't thinking about it until Friday. Just 2 days later, they called me and said, "Hey, it's going to go on our website tomorrow." And I'm
Wow.
like, "You mean tomorrow, like Saturday?" They're like, "Yeah." I was hoping I misheard you. And I said, "What time?" Because then I'm worried about how soon it's going to be that first thing in the morning. I'm in
Right.
trouble. And they said
Right.
it'll be late, like close to midnight. And so I said, "Okay." So we didn't have any choice then. So Jill started calling. First thing Saturday, we started calling people, and
Gosh, that's
I mean,
horrible.
I was nervous. I was really dreading telling my mother. I, that
Right.
that that was the hardest one. I got it over first because I wanted to get it behind me. But um, it's it was difficult mainly for her. She had just got through a battle of pancreatic cancer. She was in the remission time, um, and I just she's older, and I just didn't want that on her. And she handled it so well. I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
She did call me the next day, told me she didn't sleep at all that night, and
Oh,
and had thought about it. But she was actually, I would say, really proud of Caitlin for standing up
good.
and doing that. So, um, to answer part of your question, it comes right from a call with my uncle. When I called them to tell him he's former, I mean, he's college educated, went to the Navy. He's kind of a man's man, big guy,
Mm-hmm.
tough guy, good person. And he was a little bit upset with me for not telling
Oh,
him. And first, of course, he's gonna say we could have just went over there and handled it ourselves,
right.
which
With two fists,
yes,
the
I know.
old-fashioned way.
But then it dawned on me through that, and this is the thing. It's hard to keep it in. I don't recommend it.
Mm.
But as I told him, I had to take this burden. I mean, as Caitlin, as my daughter, I had to do it. And thinking about it, I was like, Bud, if I would have, we call him Bud, it's not his name, but it's his nickname. I said, Bud, if I would have told you, you're going to wear that burden, and you couldn't do a thing about it. And now I've just burdened you for no reason.
Mm.
And the one good thing about it all is when I was able to tell the story to my various relatives and close friends, I could tell them what happened, and I could tell them he's in jail, so
Right.
I could tie it off. And it takes a lot of the worry right off the table because now he's going to be in jail for a while. and it didn't really dawn on me, when you share that, you are sharing a load, and your close friends will want to share a load. I
Right.
encourage people to talk to me all the time about stuff, but you know, I don't know if it was the right decision. I get this question as much as any question, and what I would tell people on not talking about it is pick a few people, pick a
Mm.
few people that you think will be good to share it with, that will be supportive. You do need to talk about it. It's hard when it's just Jill and I talking about it. You
Right.
sometimes you need other people.
Right.
And if I did it again, I would pick for sure another couple, or two.
Mm.
I don't know about the family part, to be honest. I don't know that I would have shared it with them. Yeah, it was tough. It was a tough call, and it was I can tell you extremely unhealthy not to talk about
Mm.
it. I mean, it causes problems holding that stuff in for 4 years.
Hmm. Were you in therapy during the trial process at all?
No, Caitlin went to some therapy off and on. It was tough when she's down there. There was not much down there for her from
Mm.
support, which was a worry. It was hard to do it remote at the time. Jill went to a session, and I didn't until it was all done. And basically, Caitlin had been, I mean, she'd been to several therapists since she got back. Uh, it's a long process
Right.
if you go to a typical therapist, even if they're a trauma therapist. And I was told by some, I'll just say, experts in this field that I needed to. I kind of
Mm.
knew it. I had problems. I did have some issues, and I knew I had issues. I knew I needed help, but you're just a guy, and you're just a hard headed,
Yeah.
and you don't do it. But a friend that through the space told me about therapy methodology. Uh, Long story short, a gentleman in Spain has this methodology, and he took me through it, and I did 6 sessions, and they were about an hour and a half to 2 hours each. After the first session, I started feeling better.
Mm.
Not tell me about your life. No, we jumped into it, which is what I wanted anyway.
Right.
I did try regular therapist first. After the third session, I said, look, we need to get into this.
Hmm.
One, it's
Just wasn't
expensive, and
right.
two, I know what I need to talk about. At least I thought I did. Um,
Mm.
I've learned a lot about trauma. But anyway, I've went through it. After my second session, I asked Caitlin how she was doing, and it's just a slow roll. And I said, you might want to try what I'm doing. And she wanted to try it. Her therapist was going on maternity leave anyway.
Mm.
Caitlin did 6 sessions, made a huge difference to her, just like it did to me. And she had much deeper issues with it, of course. She was the real victim here. And then my wife did it. So we've all three been through it.
I want to shift gears a little bit. So, you had mentioned that in today's interview and in our initial conversation that you're a man of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider myself a woman of faith, and I know that that looks different for everybody. But something that I think anybody who's religious at all can identify with is that your faith can be as strong as you think it is, and then something traumatic can happen. And it can really bring in these questions of, like, God, why did you let this happen to my child? Why did you let this happen to me? Why us? Why not somebody else? And how did you experience your faith evolving throughout this process? What sort of pieces of your faith did you think strengthened? What weakened during this process?
Well, when it first happened, first of all, I just want to talk about Caitlin and that. It crushed hers. She was the
Mm.
most faithful person at her age. I mean, she was just incredible with it. And this was her whole reason she was there,
Mm.
was to do this and learn so she could go out and do missionary work. This was what why she was down there.
Right.
And then one night her dreams went away. And Caitlin's got a long ways to go
Right.
faith wise. It's hard for her to get over some of this. And I do think over time I hope it'll come back around. And for me, it definitely it set me back. I'll say that, and it set me back. It's just disappointing, it hurts. It just hurt
Right.
because I spoke about this a number of times, and the reality is I don't want to put blame, but I'll just say this: you listen to messages. We had a great pastor at my church, and he retired. Good new pastor coming in, but everybody's got their style,
Right.
and the style was very different. And I don't want to say he was just prosperity gospel, but there was more messaging around. You do all these good things. You be a good person. You do this, you do that, and great things will happen.
Mm.
They probably need to say they're really talking probably about the afterlife more than here.
The current
But
life.
it does come off as here. And I feel like when you hear that over and over, and it is a constant message, it hits you hard. You
Mm.
know, it hits you hard. And Jill and I are struggling, both of us struggling. I'm still praying. I'm still doing all that because it's just
Yeah.
in my core being.
Right.
But I just can't wrap my head around it, to be honest. And what really got us over the hump, and I could actually feel I was getting momentum back. Jill read this book, and it's from the 80s, I think, called When Bad Things Happen to Good People.
Mm.
She read it in like 2 days, and so you've got to read this. It's going to make a big difference. And so I said, okay. I read it, and it made a big difference. And just a really quick thing I'll tell you is it was written by a rabbi whose young son, I mean 7 to 11, somewhere that I think 11
Mm.
maybe, got some disease and died.
Mm.
And this is talking about a man of faith. This is a rabbi.
Right.
And he started explaining God's there to get you through tough times. He's going to be with you, but he's not your, he didn't say this in the book, I'm just saying it.
Mm.
He's not your genie to
Right.
just magically fix things and to do things for you, you know. And that's just how I say it to be quick about it. But the reality is, I think the faith really got me through it because it was dark times for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's painful, and you know, as somebody of faith, you want your kids and your close people to believe and all this because you know that's kind of important
It's the
in the
core
faith.
value.
So it certainly messed us up for a while. I think probably within I would say a good 9 months I struggled, and then I kind of got over the hump. And honestly, I would tell you today I think it's stronger than ever. It's been enlightening, and it makes you think deeper.
Mm.
You have deeper thoughts about it all when
Mm.
something happens, and when you're not in the middle of it happening, once you can reflect on it,
Right.
you know.
When you have the hindsight. Yeah, I remember after my dad and my brother passed away, there was all of these people who were like, God has a plan, he makes all things work for his good. And I'd be like, my dad is dead. What are you saying that this is a good thing? Like what a horrible thing to say to somebody who's struggling and who's really in the thick of it. And I think that is a phrase that Christians love to resort back to, and they're like, it's gonna be all for his good. Did you hear this phrase at all when you were going through this process?
I did. I did.
Okay.
I'm with you on it.
Yeah.
And I'll just say this about it. I'm one of those, I don't believe there's a plan like that. I just don't.
Mm.
And I'll tell you why. We have a loving God. A loving God's not going to have a kid born with cancer. What's loving about that?
Mm.
What's loving about what happened to my daughter? I just don't see that that would be part of a plan from a loving God. I cannot. If somebody can explain that to me, I'll think about it again. But how is that loving? No matter what comes out of it, there's nothing loving about all the atrocities that are happening to people, and even people that are believers and Christians and all this. How can you say that's part of God loving God's plan to let that happen? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't believe that that's the case. I believe we have free will. That means we can do what we want to do without being a puppet. The sad thing is there are people that do bad with free will and some that do good,
Right.
and that's when these things happen. The
Mm.
bad meets the good, and they do bad things. That's my thought on it.
So, well, that makes me think of a whole lot of other things,
Well,
but
you can ask whatever you want.
so do you think that this isn't on our list, but do you think that like when bad things happen, it's because God allowed it to happen, or like there's another force? Because like biblically, there's conversations about Satan. Do you think that this isn't how it was supposed to be? I guess this is more of a general faith question. I'm
Yeah,
just really
I,
curious.
I think that can God stop something from happening? I think He could,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not really the intent here. The intent is for us to be good people and do good things. And when they're bad people, they do bad things, right? I just think that's what it is. And you can say maybe it's Satan, maybe it's just they've got problems that it could be
Mm.
a lot of different things causing the
Right.
bad behavior and the horrible things that people do. But I don't look at it as God lets it happen. I think He's given us free will to live and to do and make decisions and to live our lives.
Mm.
And unfortunately, we cross paths with people that are bad and do bad things to good people.
Mm.
And then you need to rely on God
To get
and have
through.
faith in God to get you through it. and kind of restore you.
Mm.
That's how I see it. That's what I've always believed.
I frequently think that like this isn't how it's supposed to be. You know, like we're not supposed to have pain. We're not supposed to be assaulted. We're not supposed to have
Hmm.
cancer. That's kind of what I always come back to.
You know, there are three times in the Bible that basically it's not called rape in the Bible, but that rape happens. I mean, there's
Mhm.
stuff in the Bible about it as well. So you know, and it's not a good thing, but it's happening then. You know, and it's
Mhm.
just again, I feel like that there's no explanation other than he gave us the opportunity, and a lot of we've let it get away from us in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. You had mentioned healing, and I think another thing, another theme within Christianity and religion is forgiveness. And this sort of idea of, okay, well, God forgives you for your sins. And if we are, quote unquote, supposed to be more Christ like, then we should also forgive those who have wronged us. And once again, this is another one of those things that's really easy in theory and becomes increasingly more difficult, especially when it's in the context of I'm supposed to forgive the same person that raped my daughter, you know? So, how do you view forgiveness through this new lens? And would you say that you forgive Lee Martin Cramp for what he did to your daughter?
You know, that's a great question, because you're right. This is another thing people say you have to forgive and all this stuff, and it's for you, not them, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's my thought on it. No, I have not forgiven him.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like for me as a Christian, if I and everybody sins, so for me to be forgiven, I have to confess my sin, ask for forgiveness, and then try to do better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we
Right.
are human. But for you to forget forgiveness, you're supposed to confess your sins
Mm-hmm.
and ask for forgiveness.
Like admit what you did.
Yes. So if Lee Martin Cramp would admit to what he did and ask for and apologize and ask for forgiveness, I would strongly consider it. I don't know how to feel because you just don't know until that
Right.
happens. But it would take that. And by the way, so I've had people after that knew I was struggling, good friends of mine that are very faithful. They did say, you know, you need to try to forgive, and I said what I basically what I just told you, and I said, look, I could say I forgive. It's
Mm-hmm.
useless if you don't
Right.
mean it. It's not going to change a thing, and I certainly don't mean it. The only chance it would be is he actually, you know, confessed and admitted it and apologized and asked for forgiveness. I think I might could get there.
Mm.
I think I might could get there. I don't really know, to be honest, because I don't think I'd know until it happened. Because
Right.
even in the sentencing and all that, the judge gave him every opportunity. He wouldn't fess up, you know, that
Mm.
he did it, even though it's pretty clear. And
Right.
I mean, I know he's told his family and all these people a
Of course.
story, and he didn't want to
I
go
didn't
back
do
on it and all
it.
that. But
Yeah, of course.
that's where I am on forgiveness. I do believe in the forgiveness part, but I don't think it's as easy as people say. I don't know how anybody, if something bad happened to them, how you can just forgive somebody with, and they just deny it all. I mean, you know, it doesn't even reconcile in my brain
Mm-hmm.
how you do that and actually mean it.
Mm.
Meaning it's what matters. If you don't mean it, and believe
It's
me, God
useless.
knows if you mean it or not. So it's
Right.
kind of pointless, I think. But that's what it would take. So I definitely have not. I don't
Mm.
know, and I seriously doubt he will ever admit it. So this
Right.
is where it'll end, probably.
Yeah. He probably believes that he's wrongfully convicted and that he's suffering in jail for no reason. And I think that most assailants end up like that, where they convince themselves so strongly that they are in the right.
I
Um,
I don't even. I actually believe he knows. I believe
mm,
100% he knows because he
mm,
planned.
right.
He just don't doesn't want everyone else to know
Yeah.
that that's who he is.
Did he at all give any sort of statement outside of the one that he made in the box? And when I ask for a statement, I mean like my perpetrator, he had a series of letters that people had written, almost like letters of recommendation, which is
Hmm.
crazy.
Hmm.
But you know, it's a part of the process. And then ultimately, he stood up and said, like, "I'm sorry for the pain that you've experienced." It was not a admitting, but it was like he was in tears, and it was a very pathetic apology, whatever that I don't even know what to call it. But did did Lee have anything like that?
Well, so here's how that went with us. While we were there at the trial, not at the sentencing, because the judge didn't think we would want to it's quite a trip to go back. So they said you can Skype in, but he let us read victim statements.
Mm.
I had it all three of my daughters were there and my wife and all. So we all had written them. We were told only Jill, my wife, and Caitlin could do it. That's normal practice. But I asked the prosecutor. I said, look, we're all prepared. We've all written them. Can you ask the judge if we can all read them?
Mm.
And so we did. And I will just say, when we got to certain parts, and when I'm reading mine, I had a part like, to a degree, thanking the governments for making this happen because, I was worried about the vengeful thoughts I had about it all. Just
Right.
trying to make a point in a subtle, but you know what I'm talking about
Yeah.
way. And that's the time I was looking at him when I was saying it because and he would not look at me. Caitlin did
Mm.
something similar actually, but we go through it all because all that plays a role in the sentencing.
Right.
So we all did it. He had letters that came in from people, and I feel like, first of all, I have a real issue with this. This is a big issue of mine because I think it's ridiculous. He can have all the letters he wants. No, it's like getting a job. You're not going to give somebody give them a reference to call that's going to tell them you're not a good person. So they get the
Right.
people that know them in a certain way, and they get letters, and that's whatever. I don't think it should play a role at all in sentencing.
Mm.
He did not say anything himself. The judge gave him an opportunity. Also gave him a chance to, it's going to impact sentencing. It'd probably be a little harsher if you don't. He wouldn't.
Mm.
And my issue with it is he might have been a great guy forever. At least not, maybe not forever. But, the problem is the crime is the crime. And the punishment to the crime, he wasn't a felon until he was. And then he
Mm-hmm.
should be punished as a felon. That's
Right.
my take on it. I don't know why it's not that way. I don't care
Mm.
how good he was before. Now he's a crappy
Now,
person.
yeah.
He's a rapist.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, much I think like you, right? I mean,
Mm.
this seems ridiculous to get reference letters from
Yeah.
people that,
Oh, and showing pictures of them in their childhood. I'm like, yeah, when they were a child, they might not have been a rapist, but now they're 24 years old and they sure are one now. Like, why are you showing pictures of them in a Halloween costume when they were 6? That's a
no
different
kidding.
person.
I will, if I can just tell you one short thing. So about the judge and we had an excellent judge, and he even kind of said this, I think, in the sentencing part, but he felt like he just kind of turned into a demon for that night or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He said it somewhere along those lines. Here's the truth of it. He had a drug with him. He had a date rape drug with him.
Yep.
So right there, there's intent. About a couple months after the CNN article was out, Caitlin gets a Facebook message from a stranger. It was a female saying, "Hey, is this the Caitlin Hurley that from the CNN article and Antigua stuff?" And Caitlin says, "Yeah." And she says, "What should I do?" I said, "Caitlin, you've already made it public, so
Right.
just say, yeah, it is. See what she's got to say." So Caitlin said, "Yes, it is." And she said, "Well, I just wanted to tell you that he got me too. I just didn't have
Oh
the
no.
courage to go forward."
I have chills. Oh my gosh. Wow.
So it just validates what we all knew.
Uh,
I was glad she did it because it just made it very clear. It's not the first time. It was too planned out to be the first time, to be honest. So, and I know what probably for that young lady, she probably felt some guilt. She couldn't bring herself to it, and I would, I don't even think it's controversial. You have to do what's best for you.
mm-hmm.
But I think she like, man, if I would have said something, this probably wouldn't happen to her.
Mm-hmm.
It just validated everything we knew anyway, but it was kind of nice to hear
To
that.
know that. Yeah. And it's like you don't want there to be other people and it's validating. But the thing with the idea of like maybe if this other woman had spoken up earlier, it wouldn't have happened. But the likelihood of somebody actually listening to somebody speaking up is so low. And you were told that extradition this wasn't a thing.
Yeah,
And if that had been me and I was the victim and I was trying to come forward and somebody said this isn't possible, I probably would have just stopped. And so who knows if anything would have happened if she would have come forward anyways. And
probably not.
my heart.
I think she probably felt safe. I mean, you got to remember, she was in the UK. He's a police officer in the UK. It would be scary because now you're going against. So once he's in jail, he's not going to be a police officer again. It probably made her more comfortable, and she didn't go public, but she did reach out to Caitlin. I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was I was really actually glad she did, and I was just saying one thing. When we did tell all our friends and families, the shocking thing, I have to go back and count all the people we talked to, but 22 people that we talked to said they had been assaulted. That
Wow.
we talked to, we don't know that many people. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not normally, we didn't call all that many people.
Right.
And there were people that told us that hadn't told even their
Anybody.
spouse. And yeah, and that's when you realize how pervasive it really is. I guarantee you, if you go to a party and there's 12 of your friends there, it's happened to some of them.
Oh yeah.
They just haven't told anybody.
I think it is a vastly underreported crime. I think I'm working on some research right now of like COVID statistics compared to sexual assault
Mm,
statistics and how we shut down the country and the world for what we called was an epidemic. And obviously COVID was bad and people died, but I think that the number of people who have gotten COVID is significantly lower than the number of people that are assaulted, that are raped. It's something that is vastly underreported, and even the statistics on the current reporting is a lot, and I believe it's incredibly inaccurate.
we know about 60% is not reported. I mean, just statistically.
Mm-hmm.
And the real, and as I have learned, because I've been very involved getting educated on trauma and trauma informed approach and some of this stuff, the long term on this stuff, and this is, and we're talking about sexual assault, but it would apply to domestic violence and any traumatic stuff. It has long term consequences, and we know through epidemiology that it can change the characteristics of your DNA, and
Mm.
that can be hereditary.
Yeah.
And so, just think about somebody that was grew up in this a bad situation, and this all happens to them, and it can be passed on to their kids, and then you've got kids already with some sort of traumatic stuff in their head. If you want to, so I was learning a lot of this when that shooting in Georgia happened not too long ago, a few
Mm-hmm.
months back, and I started thinking about this guy as I hear about his home life, and his mom was an addict and all this. I'm thinking he probably just has mental stuff from what traumatic trauma that he's lived every day, because it
Mm-hmm.
rewires your brain, and we don't figure out how to start doing something about it's just going to get worse and worse, because it's like a multiplier exponentially.
Right.
It's it's scary.
Let's say there was somebody in your life or somebody came up to you and said that their daughter had experienced something similar. Would you tell them to pursue a court case, or would
I would
you
want to know a little bit about it. Here's what I had. I left my career last year, and all I do is work in this space, and I just do it on my
which is
own, and
so
I don't have a
awesome.
job. I just do it because I want to help. But I have had this stuff happen to me, and so a lot of sad. We know most of it's females, and most every case has been a female that I've talked to. And one, I don't push people to report. I wish they all would, because, but the reality is, when you look at the statistics, what you're about to go through is not easy. And when you think, I'm going to go through all this, and the odds of winning is 2%, is it worth it? Yeah, I just try to be honest and
Mm.
think about these things, you know, and I offer all the time to help people, as they go through it, because we've been through it. But the reality is, I understand why they don't. And sadly, a lot of the people when they're younger, because it happens more in college age into 17 or 18 years old, probably they're afraid to tell their parents.
Mm.
They're afraid to tell their parents, and so they don't want to go because parents have to get involved, and it's all this. And I hate that. I mean, I cannot imagine. I'm just glad we had the kind of relationship we did with Caitlin, and I would think with my other daughters that they would tell us, because you know you're not going to just get over it. It's
Right.
going to live there. It's just and it's only going to cause bad things in your mental psyche, I think. But I would just want to hear the story and just try to tell them what. I'm no expert, but I know probably more than most people. And I would just say, here's the pros and cons, and you have to weigh which one
Mhm.
matters more to you.
What was the most surprising thing about going through this process? And that can be a legal portion of it. It can be an emotional side of it, relational.
That is a really hard question for me, because I honestly don't know. There were so many things, but the fact that it happened and all was shocking. But as we went through it, I think one of the most surprising things is when you're told, well, nothing's going to happen, and you haven't even started investigating or anything.
Hmm.
And I did a webinar with a lady from the UK embassy, invited me to do a webinar for the justice group in the Eastern Caribbean. So it's their
Oh,
judges and
wow.
prosecutors, and we went. They want to go through my book because it's the only one that's happened. So they had a lot of. It was quite good. But I said I'm happy to do it. Can I just make a few comments? There's just I just want them to get support in place. I want them to do some things and um, make the situation better than it was when Caitlin was there. They are doing things. I'm
Hmm.
actually going down there in December to do some training for their first responders. So,
Wow.
you know, I'm trying to help because you know what? We had the worst thing in our lives really happen there, but it wasn't their fault. They
Right.
came through and did an extradition when nobody had ever done it. And I have a lot of friends there, and I want to lift them up all I can. I don't know about the surprise thing. You think something would pop to
Hmm.
mind. It was just all difficult. It was just brutally hard, and so hard because it went on. When I took this on, it for the 9 months, it was a daily grind, and
Right.
I had a job, right? So I'm working early, up early before 8:30 when most people are working here, and I've seen it with the UK and Antigua for one half of the year. They're an hour ahead of us, so it's earlier there.
Hmm.
And then at lunch, I'd check in, see if there's anything, and after work, I'd spend a good hour, and I'm writing letters. I mean, I ended up with 130 something emails to UK Antigua people and about 70 some odd calls. I think I got 5 calls
Wow.
from Antigua through the whole time. It was Communications was a challenge.
My
Communication
gosh.
just isn't good, but in the end, I thought about it. They never had to do this with people not living there.
Mm.
And so I give them some grace on that because
Right.
it's not part of their normal process. And calling, overseas people there, it's a small island. You can go by and stop at the police station and talk to.
Right.
It was different with me. They probably aren't used to encountering people like me either. Which, when
Right.
I say that, I don't mean anything bad. It's I'm persistent. I
Right.
was like a bulldog, and they were respectful, and I was respectful, and I'm friends with all those people down there. I think. I give them
Well,
a lot of praise. I named my book, after them. I wasn't going to, but I thought they deserved it. It's
anyways, yeah.
I called it Antigua Justice, and then there's kind of a subtitle, A Father's Fight. I'm not a writer, but I wrote the book, so
I read I haven't bought it yet. I do want to read it. I'm not a big reader, but I looked at the first few pages on
you can,
Amazon. You can like
yeah, you
read
can
a
see.
fair amount of it. And I thought the beginning was already really really good. But I just wanted to commend you on putting up this fight for your daughter. Like thinking back to going through this process, and I remember having to first make the phone call to report it and thinking like, "Ugh, I can't even do this. Like how do I even pick up the phone? How do I even begin this process?" And I just think that it's so incredible that you took on this weight for your daughter. And even though she wasn't necessarily the one making the phone calls, it's still incredibly exhausting for her. Just
Oh
knowing
yeah,
that this case is existing is emotionally draining, whether you're the one pushing it forward or not. But I just want to say, like, for a father to do this is one of the biggest acts of love and boldness and being courageous and persistence. And I just want to give you big kudos. And if I don't think that I have a lot of dads that listen,
yeah,
but
appreciate it.
yeah.
Um, I think I can answer your question now
Oh,
because
good.
something you triggered a thought in my brain.
Perfect.
I think the most surprising thing to me, and it's not probably what you're going to be thinking at all. I was, because it's just not my typical nature, but this brings things out of you that's not normal, is the thought of killing somebody.
Yeah, which I'm assuming you hadn't had before this
No, I
experience.
really haven't, and it's not a Christian thing, and it's I was conflicted, and my wife was worried every time I traveled to the UK.
Mm.
She was worried I was going to do something. And I'll be honest, and I wrote all this in the book. I mean, there is nothing I didn't say in the book. Probably said too much, and I think that's what my daughter wanted me to probably take out of there because she was a police officer. Said you probably don't want to say that. I'm like, look, it's just what it was. This is how I felt, and I was pretty committed to if something doesn't happen, this is where this is going to end. And people ask me from that, about it. Like, do you really think? I said, well, I felt that way. I intended it. I had been over there enough for work. Hate to say it, but when I was over there, I can tell you that the tube, which I had to take the train and stuff a lot, they have one camera and it's always on one side or the other, so you can see going in which side of the camera. I mean,
Mm.
this is where my thinking is. I know where I had a lot of a framed up plan. I mean, one, it's just something you're doing, feeling like you're being productive about it.
Right.
But it was, and then the other thing people ask me about is, well, you got other kids and a wife, and if you're in jail, that's not going to do them any good.
Right. Then that's
And I
not
said, I
helpful.
know this is the dilemma, but I said, here's how it felt, right or wrong. And I also, I don't want to put any of this on Caitlin because it's not on her, because I didn't talk to her about any of this. But for me, I can be miserable and not sleep at night for the rest of my life, or I can be in a jail cell but sleep at night and feel good about myself.
Mm.
That's how I felt.
Wow.
That's just how I felt.
That's really interesting. Well, I think there's like a certain level of anger that gets unlocked when sexual assault or rape is involved, whether it's happening to you or someone that you love. Like I think the idea of, okay, you have sex that's supposed to be this incredible thing, and it's the most intimate thing that you can do with anybody, whether it's you're somebody who believes that it should only be in the context of marriage or outside. It is the most intimate, special thing that you can do with somebody. And then somebody takes your decision and your agency away from you. And that's what happened to your daughter. And making something that is supposed to be so incredible and special, or at least enjoyable at the basic level, and making it something that is brutal and painful and that can destroy the way that you look at the world. That's what this man did to your daughter. And it just creates a whole new, like, unlocks a whole new area of anger. And that's what you were feeling. And I think it's very justified.
I was also just worried about, is Caitlin going to ever be able to get over it if nothing happens? I
Mm.
wasn't worried about me. If I go to jail, whatever.
Right.
I'm older. She's young. She
Mm-hmm.
got her whole life ahead of her. That was surprising because that's not something I'd ever really thought about before.
Right.
So you
And
say what's the most
something,
surprising is that it poured that much out of me.
right. You didn't know you were capable of thinking that way. If you were to sit down with Lee Martin Crimp, your daughter's assailant, and you could look him in the eyes and tell him one thing or ask him one thing, what would you say?
First of all,
And
there
you
better
can't
be
kill him.
bars in between us.
You can't kill him. That's not an option.
um,
Or harm him, I
I,
should
I
say.
would I would probably tell him that he's taken as just a super good faithful person and just killed her dreams and everything she had planned for her future. He absolutely robbed her of it, and that he better figure out, um, he better go find Christ because he's the only one that's going to get you out of this.
Right.
Otherwise, you're gonna have a rough go of it. What else would you say? I mean, there's a lot I'd like to say, but if it came down to something short, that's what it probably is. I want him to know how bad he messed her up, and it really messed up our whole family. I mean, our whole
Right.
family's dealt with a lot of stuff from this, but also I would tell him, you better start seeking Christ because you got your future and your eternity is at stake.
Mm.
I think that's what I would say anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know when it really comes down to it. Let's face it, all that's going to just come up, and you don't know. But
Right.
soon I'm talking to you, and I'm a little calm. That's what I think.
Right. I think about this too. I'm like, I want them to know how much I suffered. And then I'm like, or would I just think, why did you do that? Like, it's hard to put yourself in that moment. Okay, my last question. Could we open you up for, like, your email up to my listeners, or
100%.
okay.
And my email is Derrick, and it's Derrick with an underscore Hurley Hurley at Comcast COMCAST.net. Yeah, anybody can
Okay.
reach out. I'm happy to talk to anybody. I'm pretty much an open book, as you can tell. I have nothing. I don't really hold back. I just say it like it is. And just what I'm feeling is just what I express. But I think the trauma stuff's important. I'm just trying to throw
Mm.
some things. I would encourage anybody that's been through something to pursue that. I used to do this, a year ago was a lot harder for me. before I did trauma therapy. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I struggled to get through talking about it. Sometimes even now, sometimes it can be all of a sudden
Right.
something just hits you, and
Out of the blue.
I don't know what, but you can feel it, and you're about to, you feel, starting to feel emotions, but man, I'm so much better about all that. So the
Mm-hmm.
trauma stuff is really good. If you get into the right program.
I'll put all of Derrick's information in the description of this episode. I'll put your email there, your book, and a link to the article as well. The CNN article.
Yeah, CNN.
Um,
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Derrick, for being here today. This was really wonderful. You're seriously badass for helping your daughter get through this case.
yeah, I
like,
appreciate it. I just appreciate you having me on. I am trying to, it's not as much getting the story out there, but I just, it helps people empathize. It helps people feel, they're not the only ones, and it's really so I can get out and have a platform to use to talk about it, and see what I can do to help.
here and
Yeah, I just encourage people that have gone through it to talk to somebody.
mm,
You can call me or email me or whatever, but just talk to somebody you trust. Trust is
mm.
key. Don't hold it in. I just can tell you from experience. Don't hold it in because it is not healthy.
Well,
Anyway, thank you so much, Shannon.
as mentioned throughout the episode, there's going to be all of Derrick's links down below, his email, his book. The name of his book is Antiguan Justice, A Father's Fight. If you have any comments, questions, and have an episode idea, or just want to send us a message, go ahead and send an email to whattheydon'tsaythepodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok. That's both What They Don't Say Official. I started an X account, aka Twitter. It's WTDS Official. I'm not sure if I'm going to be posting much on there, but you just never know. I love you so much. I hope you have an incredible rest of your week. I'll catch you on the flip side. Cheers.